be our fresh air right there. Someone did a good shot. This will be our fresh air right there. Next move.
How did 7 Day Faith begin? 7 Day Faith basically got together. John Rosvini, to my right over here, and Rob Ferentz, our drummer, were playing in a band together when they were in junior high school, I think 9th grade. And I was in class with Rosini, and they were looking for another guitar player. And I was really into music at the time, and got together and started jamming with John. And that lasted actually, that's not how it started. It isn't.
It's not the right story?
No.
I'm not listening, I'm sorry. Go
How
ahead.
it really started was, John and I were in 7th grade together. I started a band with a couple guys in school, was playing bass. I found out John played guitar, and he was taking guitar lessons down the street from our house because we lived, relatively close to each other. And I used to go to guitar lessons with him, and we decided to start jamming together. So we had a friend, Galen, and we started playing back and forth. And all of 9th grade, John and I were together playing music together and just kind of learning as we go along. I was singing out of a karaoke machine, playing guitar. John was playing guitar, and we were doing like Jimi Hendrix and the basic stuff that you learn when you're growing up. John and I kind of lost touch at the end of 9th grade and 10th grade, and in the middle of 10th grade, John called me up, said, "I'm playing with this drummer that lives next door to me. You should come down and jam with us. We haven't played together in a long time." So I went down and started playing with those guys. Walked in with my my Tesco Delroy guitar, and I ended up becoming the singer like one rehearsal later. And we started a band, had another guy playing bass, and played our first ever show with my father's band, and opened up for them in front of like 400 people at a club, and it was a great time. And just over the years, we continued to play together, and John left, and then Rob left, and I left, and we always ended up getting back together again. But in 1997, we actually ended up forming what started off as 7 Day Faith, and put out a record with a different bass player, coined the name 7 Day Faith, and it was called Life Says We Think Too Much. And after that, it just took off. We continued to promote Life Says, had a single on the radio, went in the studio to do a second record, which ended up being our second record, Somebody Save Me, and plugged away and promoted the band like crazy, and got as many fans as possible, wrote as many songs as possible. And it always ended up being Rob Ferentz, John Rosini, and Rob Bilson. And about a year ago, we got a brand new bass player into the band, who you guys know right now, Rob Bergio. And that's basically how 7 Day Faith started. Just a bunch of kids playing in the garage and never losing touch with each other. And it always just ended up coming back to the three of us. And now with Rob Bergio, we're ready to take on the music industry and hopefully provide everybody with a good time and have a good time ourselves. So John, how did you how'd you start playing guitar, man? You never told me.
Actually, I almost became a bass player, and it's funny that I was kind of like leaning me towards the guitar and the bass, and I was gonna take bass lessons, but then like last minute I just decided to take up the guitar, and since then I was influenced like by Dream Theater and Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, all the guitar virtuosos back then. But as far as like now, I listen to pretty much anything. If it's a good song, I'll listen to it, take little bits and pieces, and listen to different guitar players, and try to keep myself open to different styles.
It's kind of similar to my story.
What is your story? I think I remember.
I was a guitar player before.
You weren't really a singer. You had like a hidden talent, didn't you? You came to audition as a guitar player.
I did. I came to audition as a guitar player. I had an old Tesco Delroy guitar that was my prized possession. My uncle had it in his closet upstairs of the house in his room, and I used to sneak up every day and just look at this thing like it was the most prized possession in the world. And I always wanted to sneak in there, and everything I could do to sneak upstairs to play that guitar. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to just put my hands on it and play it. And eventually, about 5 years later, after I was old enough to understand what the heck it was, my uncle actually gave it to me when I was about 12 years old, and I played it ever since and taught myself how to play by watching music videos and, learning, stopping and pausing and seeing where they were putting their fingers, and just picked it up, loved to do it, And how I became a singer, I have no idea. Like I said, I went to audition for my first band. I played bass in my first band, a 2-string bass guitar, and I didn't even have a nut on the damn bass. These guys were like, "You want to play bass?" I said, "Sure." So I borrowed the school bass, and I put bass string paper as a nut and put 2 strings on it, and played bass. Didn't know how to play. Played Running with the Devil because it was 1 string. Bow, 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 bow. So, rest is history. I became a singer, started singing, sang in the choir at school, learned how to sing, and the rest is history.
Okay, did everything.
How did I get into this crazy business of the music industry? I actually just started with pure natural drive. I'll never forget it. I have an older brother, Dave Bergia. Love you, buddy. And he was actually playing guitar. He had this purple metallic Electra guitar. It's called, an Electro it's called. And this thing, I remember him. He's like, "Rob, come up here for a second. I got to show you something." I went upstairs to his bedroom. He had this little PV amplifier. I'll never forget. It's about this big. And he plugged in this guitar. He played, all he did is play 1 chord, man. It was just like this ringing chord that I swear to God went through my body. I've never ever felt something like that before. I'm like, holy shit. It was ridiculous. I mean, at that point on, I grabbed a guitar. I started using his all the time. I used to get so aggravated with it. Then, I really just got into all the classic rocks at the time. He was into the Zeppelins, the Eagles, Boston, Rush. I learned every single song off the Rush album, side 1, and I learned Zeppelin 1, Zeppelin 2, the Eagles. I learned everything possible. I was just eating it up alive. I couldn't stop, It was like, it turned out to be a disease, I started playing guitar my whole life, and then I actually switched to bass guitar. And when I hooked up with these guys over here, I started playing bass, and now I'm totally into the bass, and it's just a great thing. I'm having a great vibe with it. But that's how I got into this crazy industry, and it's just a disease that doesn't seem to go away, but you love it. It's in your blood, and either you have it or you don't. And I'm one of those people that have it.
You do a good job on that bass, too.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Appreciate that.
Well, how I got started playing drums. Seems like everybody's got a story, a family member, this or that. I have one of those stories. My father was a drummer, and he was in this band. It was mostly like a top 40 band, back in like the late 70s and early 80s. And I was probably about 8 to 10 years old at the time. And being a drummer, they have the most equipment. They have, they're the ones you practice at the drummer's house. You don't see a drummer carrying their drums to their house 3 times a week to another person's house. So you practice in the drummer's house. So my dad's band practiced in our basement. So, about 7 or 8 o'clock on, whatever days, all of a sudden you just hear this incredible noise coming from the basement. And that was my dad's band practicing. So, all the drums are always, set up and everything. So, one day he'd go to work or whatever, and I'd go downstairs and I'd just start banging on the drums, just love the sounds. You can make all these different sounds, get all these things. You take out your aggression on the drums. One day he came home, he saw me playing the drums. So, and he saw that I wanted to learn. I had the interest of doing it. So, he went out and he bought me this real, like this, I don't know where he got this drum set. I remember it was a gold sparkle kit. And it was just, just like, the heads were made out of duct tape and everything, but I just remember jamming on it, and he showed me the simple, what the simple, 1, 2, 3, 4 beat that every drum pattern is, based around. He showed me that, and that was like really the only lesson I ever had. And he said everything revolves around that. So learn that, practice that. So I did that, and then, starting to, recognize music, strapping on headphones, going down to my basement, and, practicing to live albums like, Rush and, Poison from the 80s and Motley Crue and all those big, balls out bands. Putting on my headphones, listening to their live albums, shutting down the lights, and just pretending I'm on stage in front of 20,000 people. That's how I started, and then growing up listening to, like I said, Rush and like a lot of those 80s bands, they had all that power, and then the progressive rock of the 90s, like the Dream Theaters and the Queensryches and the Fates Warnings and just all that stuff. And, right now I listen to whatever, whatever sounds good, just if it's a good song, I'll listen to it, and that's pretty much it.